There's just 1 minute to showtime.
The engines are on.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
When they wrote up the systems and the rule set that we use, did working people get to write a line? What class of men on pen and paper jotted down their clues? With capital, the heart of their design. When 90 million want a thing, but some shareholders say no. Which class of people get to have their way? The people read the fine print, say that this thing has got to go, and we'll start writing a new contract here today. Don't you know that hundreds will work and one man keeps the money? They don't think they gotta tell us why. When they say the new social contract, all the bosses will be gobsmacked and everyone will want a sign. Oh, yeah, everyone will want a sign.
Hello, cousins. Thank you for joining us on this another Tuesday, additional Tuesday. We are glad to be with you. I am your co-host of today, Nicolette. It's my co-host, Mr. Mayor Jared.
Good morning.
We are so happy to have back with us after his adventures around the world. Big day today. So a lot of news going on. Some days, we were talking about this right before. Some days we really like try to put things together and like, oh, we really want to talk about this, type of a thing. And then other days things just happen. We just talk about them. So that's the luck we blundered into today. And with the announcement that Kamala Haris has chosen Tim Walz as her running mate, Minnesota's governor. Minnesota on the map.
It's time. We have
What's
a complete ticket.
Oh yeah. It's all coming together. It literally doesn't mean anything. It's really not going to move the needle whatsoever. This is just kind of to rile up the base type of a situation. We were also talking about like, okay, everybody's all excited that all these faux left people who are never really never going to be involved in this are like, oh, maybe now you're stroking their invisible beards and they're thinking it over, and then of course liberals and stuff are all about it, and the last thing I heard today before coming on is conservatives were pissed off about him for putting tampons in bathrooms. So the legitimate issues. But we're hoping that we'll be able to ruin things for everybody today by letting them know how little this actually matters.
It sure does seem to continue the theme that, and I don't think people really vote based on policy, which is disappointing to say, but man, this election, just like every election more so than the last, has to be less and less about anything that actually matters. Like, I'm just waiting for when we get to, I mean, we were yelling about flag pins back with Obama. It's like, what are we going to argue about in terms of the election? I've heard, well, tampons, it's actually a new one. I'm like, that's kind of something. And like, who is and isn't weird?
Oh, God.
It's like, can we throw out any like ideas or things that we're going to maybe try to do or accomplish or stop and unaccomplish? I don't know, like anything. I'm just waiting for it to be like, is Kamala's hair or Trump's hair better? And that, what bearing does this have on the election?
Every time it's like, could the bar get lower? And you think no, but it does inevitably get lower. And it's always a surprise every single time. It's like, yeah, actually the bar could get lower in a way that you could have never even anticipated. So buckle up, assholes. Because
is Kamala black or Indian? It's like, how does that affect me at all?
Yeah, right. That has no impact on me at all in any possible way. I see it as it's basically all like bartering It's like the whole dickering thing about like, well, they're this and they're that and they did this and they did that. But ultimately, it's a zero-sum situation every single time. And that's what this whole big ado about announcing a VP really is, because it's the VP's VP. Like, first of all, like, we just everybody just assumed her as the nominee. And you can't believe the polls, because I have been looking at polls that say like they're in a dead heat, just like Biden and Trump were, and now they're like, she has 99% approval rate. And I'm like, no, the fuck she doesn't. Nobody ever would. So it's just like, calm down. Don't listen to the polls. We've seen over and over and over again, election-wise, that the polls have had almost nothing to do with the actual outcome of things. They really aren't trustworthy in that way. And I'm starting to get the impression. I was kind of thinking this over on this morning. Before I get any further, to hello to the chat. Hello to Are You Time Traveler 2, who says hello to us. So hello to you. Thank you for being with us. Oh, I lost my train of thought. Oh, what I was saying was, because I was trying to turn my captions on. what I was saying was, is I was thinking this over, kind of mulling this over, and kind of for about a week or so, maybe a little over a week, there had been this whole kind of talking about, oh, it's probably going to be Josh Shapiro. She's probably choosing, or they're probably choosing Josh Shapiro, who's got a really nasty reputation as a Zionist and not really done anything for anybody. And it seems to me that he was probably actually never really in contention. It was really just to scare people into thinking, like, are they going to pick this other villain? Are they going to pick a Batman villain? Is that really going to happen? No, we're going to pick the guy who cuddles Piglet. Come on. And then everybody, the whole internet blows up about it one way or the other, right? Like, this, the Piglet tampon man, like whatever it's going to be. And if you look at his reputation, he does have a pretty clean, good reputation domestically, when we're talking about domestic policy. And I've got a list of some stuff that he's done as governor that we can run down. But when you're talking internationally, it's the same bullshit. Supports Ukraine actively, goes on, video calls with Zelensky about what they're going to do this way, that, and the other. And has been always a vehement supporter of Israel and trying to establish various partnerships and business doings, with the state of Minnesota. I keep trying to say, I've tried to say Montana, and I've tried to say like literally every other state that starts with an M, but it's Minnesota. It's not Missouri. It's not Montana. But I keep doing it. It's Minnesota. I'm gonna say it again. It's Minnesota. So he has, as far as the state of Minnesota goes, a pretty good record, because he's done passed a lot of bills that really have helped a lot of people, or theoretically would, like, oh, well, this will kick in 2027, or this pay raise or whatever, that kind of thing. So, yeah. So that's basically where things are at this moment. So but again, that's what makes me think that this was kind of a whole ploy situation to get people excited and talking about her and talking about what's going on with her campaign and where it's going to go, and make her look more progressive, because she doesn't have a platform yet. Nothing's happened. The only thing she's said for sure is that she stands with Israel and will back up Israel. And now we're moving military into the Middle East, which is, fucking great. We all saw this coming, though, I think, or a lot of us saw this coming.
That even floated out of my head. Like, I forgot that was a thing that's happening. It's like, we are directly sending 4,000 troops. It's like, oh, I'm sure it's for nothing, though. Like, yes. Don't worry about it.
There are battleships already, around the Suez Canal and all these different areas. There are battleships that have, parked themselves for intimidation purposes, there. So that's already going on. That's happening. When America says deploy troops, they're there within a matter of hours. So it's, it's not like, oh, they're going to do it. No, it's done. It's happening. They're there. They're there getting paid. They're there taking up space. Maybe even getting war pay. Honestly, I don't know how exactly that works, but it seems like they could be. Receiving that. So when that's what American taxpayers are paying for. We can't have health care, but we can go occupy the Middle East and try to intimidate and start shit there, which I think is where this was always going to go. It kind of seemed like maybe we won't go this far with it because this is a bad look and nobody's really supporting this. Then again, you got to think that America's got such big stakes in this location, in this region, in the greater Israel situation of having full control over the Middle East finally. Um, so I think that's where we're basically, that's where things basically stand. Is they? I don't think we're gonna. It seems like America's not gonna give up without at least a little bit of a fight, and it's like at the point where they think that it's fun. Like, oh yeah, let's just throw some troops at it. Who cares about those guys? Whatever. Poverty draft. We'll just get more. So we'll just get more. That's where we are. But I'm gonna shut up for a second. And let Jared share some thoughts because I'm still in the mode of hosting on my own where I just had to keep going and going and going. But I don't have to Energizer Bunny this entire conversation. So let's hear what Jared has to say.
I'm here. I'm trying to fight my way around a paywall here, so I guess we're not going to hear from the Washington Post, but we can hear from the U.S. Department of Defense. That's actually probably a decent one. Let's hear what they have to say themselves. Excuse me, while I resize this window. There it is. Nice. I had completely forgotten that we are actively sending troops, and it's like most wars. It's like you might not realize that we're in it until like years later. Like the people who were hanging out. World War II didn't have a day when they sent around. It started, everyone. World War II has officially begun.
Yeah.
And it's just you're looking around and suddenly like, oh, we're in a war, and we have been for like a year. Uh-oh. So when we look back at whatever the heck happens in the Middle East, I think that's going to be the situation with this. Because what is this? This is 4 days ago. I didn't know the U.S. Department of Defense just like put out articles. I guess DOD news does exist. It makes sense. Because usually the mainstream media just does it for them.
Right, yeah, like why even bother?
just read this stuff directly. More defensive military capabilities will deploy to the Middle East to bolster force protection for U.S. troops in the region and to defend Israel. To bolster force protection. All right. I'm wrapping my head around these terms.
That's some words.
Force protection, said Deputy Pentagon Press Secretary Sabrina Singh today. That's a name I don't even know. The deployment will be in response to threats from Iran and Iranian-backed militias, Singh said. Following the Hamas attacks on Israel in October 2023, the U.S. pledged to help defend the nation. In April, when Iran and Iranian-backed groups launched strikes at Israel, which they're kind of launching strikes at them every other week, the United States led a coalition that helped defend the country from armed drones and missiles. Actually, I'm trying to think of, that's one of the ones where it's like, oh, we blocked most of the missiles except for, and then I heard other people saying, well, that's the strategy is you send like a ton of missiles that are going to be hit by the, quote, Iron Dome, and then that creates an opening for your hypersonic missiles. I'm trying to remember if they actually used those or not. But like Iran hit the targets they were trying to hit in Israel, and it seems that the point is to be like, look, Israel, we can hit targets kind of whenever we want, so don't F around. But then Israel they sent bombs at was it Lebanon just the other day, and then they assassinated the second leader of Hamas inside of Iran. And Iran, like usual, is just we were saying this before the show. I'm kind of considering myself on team nothing ever happens, because every week you hear a new, Israel, can you believe Israel blew up this hospital within the borders of this country? It's not even in Palestine anymore. They're just blowing up Lebanese things, and then nothing comes of it. It's like, oh yeah, freaking Hezbollah is gonna declare open war and just freaking roll into Israel. It's like, I don't think they are. I don't know if that's ever happening. Not ever happening, but it's been years at this point. I mean, just the Palestine situation's been going on since the frickin' 40s, and there's been attacks and atrocities like this committed on a nearly nonstop basis since then. Israel's been chucking bombs across their borders for decades at this point, and I don't know why this year would be the year it's like, F it, total war, we're doing it. We're going to give the U.S. an excuse to roll into Iran and wipe it out, like level it to the ground.
It's entirely possible, but it's sort of like we're just, they're constantly fighting against people really not being in support of this, which is something that the government and the military is not used to, historically, especially even, up until recent times. It was always like, if America's doing it, there's good reason to do it, so they must be right. So, or just a complete lack of investment in the situation. Like people just are like, whatever, I don't care. I have no input, no knowledge of this situation, do whatever. But they've received so much global pushback on this particular situation. And you can only cry foul so much with it. Oh, this is anti-Semitism. This is against Israel, and it's like, no, this is none of those things. This is literally like stop genociding people and trying to usurp your borders. That's all that it is. People are so much more aware to this situation than even I can recall. In any real other time when anybody cared this much about stuff that wasn't going to directly impact them.
The Washington Post article I was trying to get to that had the paywall on it, the headline was like, for the first time in however long, like the majority of Americans do not support the
Right.
XY military thing. And I mean, I would always argue that usually the majority of Americans don't support these things, but you look at how you can kind of get polls to say whatever you want.
Yes.
The only people who seem to be doing anything about this are like the Houthi rebels or was it Ansar Allah? I'm trying to use their actual name because they don't call themselves the Houthis. But like, and they, as like every once in a while, you'll still see a headline about like, some ship in Yemen has stopped some other ship from doing something, and but then again, it never.
Did you see that headline that said that story that said that it was something to the degree that of the U.S. military had struck a deal recently, or I guess in the last couple of years, with The Rock for promotional reasons, and it was like $11 million spent, and like it actually netted like negative 38 enlistments when they divvied up the money. Like,
it's like technically,
it did so bad that it was like negative 38 enlistments. So
we do not have a lot of troops to deploy in the first place right now. Like, I don't really care about troop levels. That's not a thing that I'm studying, but people who seem to care about it are very concerned, and that becomes another thing of like, it's not that you're like, I don't think you're like, let's ship in a bunch of people from outside of the U.S. specifically to join the military, but I think the conditions are such that poor people are already getting funneled into it, and if you just are always increasing your like underclass of extreme poor people, it will like trend towards rising enlistment numbers when it becomes the only thing you can do. Like when you're broke enough, it's like, well, it technically is the jobs program of the U.S. I guess if you argue that we have one. So like, I don't know, maybe that is a calamity that's coming. But personally, I'm like,
what's happening in Ukraine. Like they're starting to, they're just like grabbing people off the street at this point. People are getting into literal physical fights. Like, I will not go. And they're like I've seen videos of wives beating up people, like when they literally try to kidnap their husbands off the street. The last thing that happens is when when something dies, an empire or a country or whatever, before it's over, is when they start grabbing people off the street, because the next stage after that is kids. And when they start putting kids in it, it's over. So, and that will happen next. So Ukraine is just like, hey, what about us? And now you look back at us over here, give us money again.
I kind of think and hope that things are going to unwind before we ever get to like that particular weird emergency where the U.S. military has turned on the U.S. because like the Roman legions back in the day, they come back from war and try to take over Rome.
Right.
I don't think we're going to get there because we've also whittled down how many people it even requires to wage these wars. But then you're talking about Ukraine, where Ukraine has tons of stuff. We send them tons of bombs and guns. It's just you need a human being.
Give them money like all the time.
Yeah. They don't have people there. They don't have enough human beings to operate the thing. And every like able-bodied male who wasn't like already gung-ho about let's join up has left the country. And now Ukraine's trying to pull people back in, like, oh, we're going to mess up your passport if you don't come back to the consulate so we can send you to war.
Again, to that point, so much can be done remotely at this point. War is basically just war games at this stage, because things can be done, with the push of a button. Obama's whole drone war situation is where this all kind of basically started. Like, you really don't need these massive forces. They're really more for intimidation purposes. Say like, oh, we sent 4,000 troops, 4,000 human people. You really probably need like 400 people to do what those 4,000 people are there to do. So
let's see if they tell us more specific. Like, are they going to be sitting on ships? Are they going to be sitting in bases? Singh said the commitment for more defense capabilities in the region comes from conversations last night, so I guess August 1st, between President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. This morning, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, I didn't know Lloyd Austin was the third. All right, Lloyd Austin the third, followed up on those conversations with Israel Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. She said, "We've demonstrated since October and again in April that the United States global defense is dynamic, and the department retains the capability to deploy on short notice to meet evolving national security threats," she said. As a result, the Secretary will be directing multiple forthcoming force posture moves to bolster force protection for U.S. forces region-wide, to provide elevated support to the defense of Israel, and to ensure the United States is prepared to respond to this evolving crisis. Yeah, this very much sounds like we're kind of just parking people to be around.
The curious thing there was the language of national defense threats. So we're somewhere like completely on the opposite side of the world. You're saying that you're worried about Hamas, doing something to the United States, or are you implying that Israel is a part of the United States borders? Because that's some very curious language to be using. Because
I guess
what
Iran, it's supposed to be like, if we don't stop Iran there, they're going to come here. And I'm like, man, that really worked out with Iraq and every other country we do this to.
Right.
So what forces and or units will deploy remains to be determined. Singh said the United States has already has a robust defensive capabilities in the region. It's like, yeah, we already have a ton of shit over there. And those forces may be redeployed within theater. White House officials said, however, that there will be new capabilities for the region. I think this is supposed to be like if Iran decides to try and take over the world suddenly, like we're supposed to believe is going to happen any day now. Mm-hmm. Iran, they could be right in your backyard at a moment's notice.
It's like the new thing. Like when I promise, like nobody had ever heard the word Hamas before, October. Like very few people could have told you where even Israel was, or any of its neighbors, or explained what Hamas was, because it was like the ISIS thing. It's like, here's the new buzzword, guys. Here's the new thing that you personally should be afraid of at your personal house, at your personal job, in your personal United States area that you occupy. So it's just the new thing.
They're talking about the ceasefire deal, and I don't know what deal that we've already had many ceasefires in the past, and Israel just took out like who I think was like supposed to be one of the lead negotiators in that ceasefire.
Right.
They killed him while he was inside of Iran. Nothing ever happens. I think it's a big nothing.
Yeah, it's the same. It's just to say another thing, same as it ever was type of a situation. In the chat, somebody has mentioned that our military will let illegal immigrants join then when their time is up, deport them. I think that's probably a good take. We're also hearing someone said, about how Tim Walz is been now the choice, and it might sway voters, I think, which was the entire purpose of choosing him due to his good reputation. So thank you guys for joining into the conversation. Agreed. I think that this whole thing, both posturing for war, because that appeals obviously to the to conservatives and people who are like war, your Elon Musk stands and all that. Like, people are like, let's do war, except that I cannot qualify to go do military, so you get a lot of people like that, they think that they like, just like watch like Casualties of War or Platoon or something. You get to see people like who are like did whatever they had to do. I realize they're fiction, but they're based on true accounts. People that did anything that they could do to get there with the sole intent of getting to kill people. They know how to lie, they know what to say. So you have a lot of people don't realize, your neighbors, like, there's a lot of people who have this mentality that they wish that could be them. And that's what the military wants. They kind of breed that mentality, but they're like, it's one of those things like, you know. So they've got that. They want people to want to do that and to want to support that. So when we say we're doing war, that appeals to those people. And then at the same time, let's not forget, this is the same government that called it said game on here. Well, their new candidate, their shiny new candidate, who couldn't seem to string three words together without sounding like she'd ate too many edibles and gone and done a speech prior to this time, now has this really progressive seeming announcement about a running mate. So they're running both sides. It's the same government. It literally is. So that's where your mind should be. So like everything that they're telling you right now about, even though Kamala's gotten a platform, she's trying to piggyback off of Tim Walz's platform to say they're progressive, they're going to do these great things, they're going to give you money and healthcare and things. Don't worry, vote for them. Wink. The same stuff that has been promised every time and never delivered on. That's what we're looking at right now. And this is obviously going to unfold. But let's not forget the headline here. It's the same government that's trying to say, hey, we're your friend, is also lining up to kill people right now, and defending the people who are genociding other people right now. So it's not two sides of of an argument here. And that's what we in this show are always talking about. There is only one party, and that is the party of corporations, and who is going to literally monetarily benefit from getting whatever wing of the government is control to do their bidding. And that's why there is no discernible difference between the parties. So if one party can do both things, do war gleefully and be like, oh, hey, workers' rights, peace and love at the same time, then, that's one party. That's one entire party. So
it's interesting
they
having
just have different routes to the same thing. Like they're going to try to distract with this stuff. And that's exactly what's going on here with this. It's a distraction for the people who don't want war, but also pandering to the people who do.
It's interesting that we have talking about how nothing ever happens. Even this seems like a situation where you have the current like Kamala's not technically an incumbent, but she kind of is because she's been in the administration that's currently in control. Mm-hmm. And then I see I see campaign promises or like, what am I going to do in my first 100 days? And I want to remind people, it's like you have more than 100 days left
right now. Yeah.
As your administration currently. Why hasn't there been no movement on any of these? And the things they mention are relatively small anyway. Like, why have we not figured out the student loan thing at this point? Like, they really got nothing. They couldn't even get through the was it $10,000 forgiveness for if you had very specific types of loans and very specific types of payback plans. Like, they couldn't get that done. They keep sending me emails about it.
I got an email. Actually, something that Tim Walz did for Minnesota. One of the bills that he signed was that there would be free college for people whose families earned less than $80,000 in a year. So it's like they're just trying to be like shady about it, honestly. Like they're trying. Well, no surprise there, but they're trying to say like, look at all the things that he's done. He got kids free food. All the students get free food now, and there's going to be rights for healthcare workers. And weed, and like there's just like you could go down this laundry list of things that look like things that are good things, except that we are, it's crumbs. It's honestly crumbs. The bar is so low that when you look at it, you're like, oh shit, that sounds awesome in 2027, where there's plenty of time for whoever to come in next to take it all away.
It's always some far off,
right?
Like, oh, they can do it over there. It's like, why don't you just nationally do? So we clearly already have blueprints.
Throw a couple of things out. That's the fact of it is, and I think we talked about this one or two shows back or something. But they could right now, Democrats could right now throw us a couple of bones and win the whole thing. We're at this kind of a weird intersection of things where Donald Trump is usually kind of this unstoppable force, and I don't really know exactly what it's been. But he seems a little like lackluster for him. Something's kind of taking the wind out of his sails. I think maybe he thought the whole assassination attempt thing was going to just straight up project him. And I was basically wrong about it. When I first saw it, I was like, oh man, this is game over. And then it was a fucking assassination attempt and it didn't move the needle at all. So it's exactly what Jared was saying, is nothing matters. Nothing changes, nothing happens. And that's where we end up on this Project 2025 thing. And I know that's a big buzzword right now because it's supposed to be. That is supposed to be. The reason you are even, most of the things that are done in the government, whether it's an incoming government, a government preparing to come in some future, part of the election cycles, or the one that's there, you generally don't hear about these things because these things are done in the dark for the most part. And then suddenly it pops up and they pass it and you're like, what the hell was this bill, right? But curiously, you're hearing all this Project 2025 stuff. And the reason you're hearing about that is because ordinarily the people writing it, it's supposed to be the Heritage Foundation, which are Trump affiliates and Trump supporters that are, who wrote this and are wanting to do this project situation. But you wouldn't be hearing about that necessarily unless it were people like liberals blowing it up to try to be like, look, what's going to happen next year? What's going to happen then? Okay, so like if you are a woman, if you are a person of color, if you are a gay person, if you are a trans person, if you are a disabled person, if you are a poor person, on and on and on. Like, you have been a political bartering chip for longer than you've even been alive in a lot of cases. So this is not something that's going to happen to you in a couple of months, okay? This is something that has been happening to you longer than you've been alive. And that's where we really stand at this point. No matter what the administration is, we have always been moving more and more towards austerity and more towards authoritarianism, and it's weird to think about, like, oh, how could we be more authoritarian than like in the 18 fucking fucks? But the idea is that, like, we are. It adjusts. It's like a moving scale about what is going to be authoritarian and how you're going to get the most control over the most people. And that is by keeping them impoverished. And that is by making sure that they have these loser dead-end jobs that they can't afford to lose because their healthcare is tied to it, and, this, that, and the other thing. So if they can come up with a good buzzword to say, oh, this is going to happen, then suddenly the liberals, the Democrats end up getting tons of money thrown their way vis-a-vis fundraising from people who cannot afford it to say, oh, we got to stop this. You got to help us stop this. Can we have $5? And like that's political panhandling, honestly.
Since we have nothing to offer, there's nothing being offered to us, and this is by either party, by the way. It's not like Trump has this awesome platform out there and these amazing plans of what he's going to actually do about anything. All the Democrats have is, will stop a potential bad thing from happening, but then you look at their track record of stopping bad things from happening, and it's like, Roe is gone. Like, that happened under your watch.
Right.
The thing you said you would stop from this horrible taking away a women's bodily autonomy. Like, you just kind of let that go.
Yeah, it's several super majorities decided. We're talking. This has been on the books for 50 years until now. They have had control of things enough times. They, the good guys, the Democrats who are there for you, have had enough control enough times to codify this. It could be done by executive order, even if it was turned over by the next president. That's not the point. It's a gesture. It is saying, hey, we
did everything we could. Like, actually do everything we could.
Exactly. It's like we're taking action because we sit here and we watch nothing happen. And then another election goes by and nothing happens. It's the ratchet effect constantly. The Democrats tee up a situation for the Republicans to do a bunch of really bad shit, and then they get back into control, and they're like, why do you think Louis DeJoy is still the head of the post office when he obviously fucking shouldn't be? And that's another thing to keep your mind, going forward. Say Kamala wins, right? Okay, well, there's no new people going to come in with her. Anthony Blinken is still going to be Secretary of State. There's still going to be Janet Yellen. There's still going to be these exact same horrible fucking people.
Nothing significant will change.
Right, nothing will change. Remember Biden's decree of nothing will fundamentally change.
Fundamentally, that's the word.
Yeah, nothing is going to fundamentally change. So there's no reason for everybody to get so hot under the collar about this Project 2025 stuff unless you're just really, really attached to the orange man bad strategy. Because the thing of it is this stuff, if we're talking in summary, this stuff breaks down into a few different categories of either it wouldn't matter, the Democrats are going to do it anyway, it's already partially the case, it already is the case, or maybe it actually is super bad. And if you're talking about what's already happening or already partially happening, we're talking about unrestricted executive power, which every administration does that. They put in sycophants or their own stands and things. They're talking about replacing 50K civil servants with loyalists. That's the same thing, ultimately. Prosecuting political opposition, that's already happening all the time. From, I saw something the other day about some prosecutor who was trying to give jail time to people who wore black T-shirts on the day that Trump was elected. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Literally from like the very bottomest level to the very top. That is always happening anyways. And somebody usually steps in and when is that ludicrous and says like, hey, no, there is no legal precedent for this. But we're also talking about, okay, so they're saying, okay, so there'll be abortion surveillance. That's already mostly happening in red, all red states are already doing that, watching who's coming and going to get abortions. Banning of abortion pills, that's already partially the case, so forbidding gay couples from adopting, that's always on the table for debate. Banning transgender healthcare, always up in the air, this place will, this place won't, or prosecute these doctors with this, that and the other thing. Repeal LGBT anti-discrimination laws. That is, again, always happening in some form or fashion somewhere.
I love bringing it up. I got fired from a public school teaching job for being a queer like 2 years ago, well, 6 years ago at this point. But anytime people are like, you're going to lose your protections, I'm like, what protections are you talking about?
Yeah, you are not Garrett. That's what I'm saying. Jared is a political
pawn. If you don't vote for
I am a political pawn. We are being used. If you're elderly, you are a political pawn. Like literally anything that makes you not a white man, or even maybe an affluent white woman, because these things in the Project 2025, those are the people who this is the least likely to affect. But if you're literally anybody outside of that spectrum, if you could say anything about yourself, then no, you are not protected. Just exactly like he said, that is already happening. So you can't say that's going to happen next year when this happened. What'd you say, 6 years ago? This is to him right now. This is live. We're talking. We had happened.
A Democrat governor, 2 Democratic senators, a Democrat mayor, like that's it. And I'm in Arizona, and like, oh, cool. We have the different letter people are here. It's no longer the R, now it's the D letter people. So things are definitely going to change.
Nobody came to help him. There was nothing. No one came and saved him and said, no, this is the wrong thing to do. Obviously, it's the wrong fucking thing to do. Like that. And what message does that send? That makes it equates him, a very competent, helpful, loving person, makes him seem like he's some sort of predator or danger to children, which is disgusting and immoral, honestly, to do that to anybody. Like, that is ridiculous, but nobody came to help him in a Democratic scenario, so you cannot sit there and say the Republicans are going to do this to him when the Democrats were in charge and they're like, meh, not our problem. It's exactly, a tale as old as time. Whether you're Republican or Democrat does not make any difference. There are people who have never had the upper hand in the argument and have always just been used as political fodder to get donations or move, things in their direction for an election. And we also are talking about, they're like, oh, well, queer media and pornography bans are going to come. That's already happening. Mass deportation of immigrants. That's happening like crazy right now. They just what was it? I can't remember at this point, but they just did a thing where it's just like they're going to start turning back people, like not even letting them cross the border. So there's that.
We have, we have Biden's. That still has to be going, right? Because I didn't hear anything about being reversed, where it's if border crossings exceed a certain number, the border gets shut down for a period of time.
There's so much to keep track of, you got to keep, because they keep doing things at every turn, and that's kind of the point I'm making. So we're talking about the restriction of immigration. We're talking about mass deportations. Let us also not forget when we saw the people on horseback literally hitting, immigrants with whips, and then there's also the talk about, internment camps, immigrant internment camps. Okay, that's just changing the language again from child cages to what's all the damn
detention facilities.
the immigrant and detention centers. They are concentration camps. People, like, they are literally concentration camps on our borders. And you have people go out there fake crying all over it and acting like it, and the next thing you know, they're using the language of So there's that. That is all. A lot of this has happened under Obama, especially, and it's now happening under Biden's administration, and it would have happened a lot more under Trump, but he just really did not have the momentum and the time to do as much. Also not being a career politician, not knowing how to hit the ground running as fast as somebody like Obama and Biden in their administrations have. Because Biden's a goddamn devil. Like, everything he's ever done in his career. Don't feel bad about that's karma. Like, this brain melting in his head, that shit is karma for all the horrible shit that he did to people. People's lives were ruined. People died from, like, the crime bill and things that he was responsible for. So there's so many things, like, that we're talking about here about, dismantling environmental regulations. That's already happening. Regulations. That's already happening. Prioritizing drilling and fossil fuels. That's happening. And a lot of this whole Israel shit has a lot to do with taking their gas in oil that they've got in the deposits. That's going on everywhere. There's so many things, like trying to destroy unions and collective bargaining. Biden literally stopped a strike of railroad workers. It said you cannot have sick days, and you just have to die on the job. So, what is the tipping point here? What makes this Project 2025 so special, other than people conflating it on social media and telling you that it's special? Let's see. I think I covered pretty much all of the main ones.
Let me give you my
overtime protections, got benefits for workers. These things are already happening, or the Democrats are already doing them. Moving towards privatization of Medicare, and probably Medicaid as well. And that actually, the privatization of Medicare Medicare is happening. For older people in some states, they are switching to a program called Pathways for Aging, and what that is they are allowing the insurance companies like United Healthcare, your Anthem, your Blue Cross Blue Shield, they get to run the programs now at their discretion by contract for a few years.
Let me give you the two takeaways that I think are important about Project 2025 to keep in mind. Number one being that, like, what is it? Like, is it a set of legislation? Is it a set of things that are, like, even geared up to happen? No, it's kind of like the Green New Deal. It's a list. It's like a wish list. It's if we had infinite God power, this is what we would snap our fingers and do.
Yeah,
how
like
much of the Green New Deal got accomplished? How much of, like, we were all very, in the same way that I personally, like, back in the day, was very excited when I read that. I'm like, oh, cool. This is the stuff they're going to do. And then basically none of that happened. Mm-hmm. Even if you get a president in there that wants to do everything they possibly can to get everything under Project 2025, you got executive orders. So at best, you got 3.5 years of it.
Right. And with the Green New Deal, it was supposed to move away from fossil fuels and fracking and natural gases and things like this. And we as a country, in the United States, has I would say quadrupled down on that. Like, it's been things that like gone to it harder. Like you said, don't do it. We're going to do it harder.
That's really the Ukraine war that's kind of made it impossible for us to reduce our shit because we won't. Because our use won't go down. They could say that promise is fulfilled by producing less oil in the U.S., but then buying more from Venezuela and Russia, all these countries that we won't talk to and don't want to do trade with. If you remember, the U.S. did send a call into Venezuela shortly after we were trying to shut down Russian oil production. And personally, I want us to move to nuclear, but when I see that, once again, Biden has beat the high score of oil production in the U.S. We've produced more this year than ever before, which has happened. Talk about peak oil. It's happened under him. We do have to continue using these fuels until we move over to nuclear, which is currently the option that makes the most sense. It's funny to me that people talk about Project 2025 like it's this definite thing that is going to happen. It is, oh my God, these people get in these back rooms and do conspiracies about how the nation's going to be run. and that is accepted as fact, which it is. This is a thing. It is a real document. A bunch of people did sit in a room and write it. But if I bring up something like the Bilderberg meetings, they're like, oh, you're a crazy conspiracy person. A bunch of really, really rich, powerful people would never sit in a room and draw up plans for how they think the world should go, and then it'd be impossible to then track what they want to have happen against what happens and see, oh, that it does though. Like these plans come to fruition. Bilderberg is a bunch of rich people who hang out in Europe. I think Peter Thiel goes there. Like it's not a lot of names you would recognize, but
Right.
the companies they run you would. And once a year, participants between 120 and 150 people, including political leaders, experts from industry, finance, academia, and media. About 2/3 of the participants come from Europe, the rest from North America. 1/3 from politics and government, the rest from other fields. And by other fields, they mean like the business leaders. If you
Right.
talk about, oh, all the rich people have a cabal where they decide the future of the world, it's
Yeah,
like
they're
they
not
do.
talking about workers or like union leaders. No, this is like
The-
they're like the richest assholes of the richest assholes.
It's like the guy who runs Here We Are, well-owned Wallenberg-owned multinationals such as Ericsson, ABB, IBM, Xerox. Xerox still a company that's going. Oh, it is. It's still going. Royal Dutch. Oh, Shell. There you go.
Oh, of course.
Nokia. Is it the phone Nokia?
Wow.
Dalmer. Oh, heads of state. King Juan Carlos of Spain. Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands. Like these freaking lizard people.
Like,
Get
right?
together.
In other words,
And they're like, perhaps the caloric intake of the Indian may be reduced. And like, that's the kind
Right,
of shit
yeah.
they're doing. And then their moves happen because they can, like, the actual capitalists do get together and have meetings. And you're treated like a psychopath if you bring that up.
Yeah,
But,
right.
Project 2025 is definitely happening. And as soon as Trump gets in, he's going to dictatorship it all up. Because
Yeah.
even though Biden doesn't have those powers, Trump magically will because he is Trump.
and it's not to say that he also wouldn't support this if he knew what it was.
If he knew what it was.
Like that's what you really got to consider as well. He wants these things obliquely, but somebody's gonna have to put it in big letters in front of him on a piece of paper because like he doesn't know what this shit is. People have said about him multiple times he doesn't actually believe any of the shit that he's saying. He's like. It's just saying it to like get a reaction out of people, and like that's what works. It's like when he was standing there holding up a Bible in front, like it's like what he just does what he thinks is gonna work, and it works inevitably. Like it makes the liberals mad, and it riles up his base, and then makes him feel more popular. And I think maybe I said this already, but I hate to cite him on this. But when he was in some sort of interview or something where he I don't know where you call it when you're sitting on a stage with a big audience exactly but that he was asked about JD Vance being his VP, and he's like, look, the vice president doesn't matter, like they don't make any difference, they don't change anything, and that's what we need to also remember, because he actually is true and factual about that, not because he's it knows what he's talking about, he just actually happens to be right that it's true. The vice president doesn't matter. They don't mean anything. They're just there to hold space and give college commencements and break ties in Congress. They really don't serve any actual purpose. And if you want to think about that, like what important things did Kamala Harris do in the past 3+ years? Like name one. Name literally one thing. Like this is something that we do and I can't. Like other than the fact that she just made an asshole of herself pretty much anytime she ever opened her mouth. And now she's the nominee. So it's like, again, how much lower can the bar go? Like you don't think it can. Like she's probably like the worst, most identity political candidate they could have chosen to do this. And it's almost like there was no thought even put into it. It's just like, oh, okay, I'll just move into this position. Everybody's like, I guess so. But there have to be people behind her in the Democratic think tanks that made this decision. But that's what makes it really weird. You basically we're at the stage now. We have two parties who do not want to win. Like neither one wants neither wants the job. They just want to reap the benefits. They don't want to actually be president. Like maybe she does want to be president, but Trump doesn't want to fucking be president. He didn't want it the first time. He just wanted to be able to reap the benefits from it and make money. That's all he cares about is punishing his enemies and making money. And if he could do that without having people yell at him all day long about shit he doesn't understand, that's what he would do. He's
wish he
old,
would.
man. Like he wants to go do rich old man asshole shit. And people keep trying to be like, say a word that makes sense. Be the
I wish that
president.
Trump getting the presidency again actually meant that some of these ghouls would be sent to jail. Like, I wish that was a real thing, but it's not. Like, he was president for 4 years. How many of his enemies did he lock up?
Right.
Julian Assange. That's like the
Yeah.
only guy I can think
Not
of.
it wasn't for lack of want. It was just because like everything he wanted to do
can't do
ultimately was illegal.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, he doesn't have the apparatus to do it, which is funny because you've now watched the Democratic apparatus, like, after 9 million tries, they have got him on something. He has some convictions now, which, man, that didn't matter either, did it? Nobody talks about that shit.
Yeah. And
Him
that,
getting
you know,
shot, him getting the shrapnel on his head didn't seem to affect anyone. Him being a convicted felon doesn't seem to really bother. I mean, who gives a shit is really my opinion. It's like, they're going to call, oh, he's this horrible criminal. I'm like, how many babies have you killed in just your administration, Kamala, let alone Biden over his 50-year career of dropping bombs on people?
Right. And I also couldn't care less about the being a convicted felon. I mean, I guess the crime really does matter a little bit more. If he literally had like brutally murdered somebody or something, I'd be a little more invested.
If he had dropped bombs on various towns of innocent people, that would be something.
Because you can technically become a felon from like if you got caught with too much weed in the wrong state. You know, like, and would you really hold would that really to you mean the same thing if that person you really actually believed in wanted to run for president versus somebody you knew was like an actual serial killer and they both were considered felonious? Like, are you going to tell me those things are the same and should then therefore exclude them? So I hate to give Trump any kind of credit, but I will point out when something is hypocritical about about something like that.
I do believe that Kamala is going to win, and I think it's because the issues that people like the number one polled issues that people are thinking about are the prices of shit and immigration, and on those things, Trump's got it. Like, people, like, even just in the polls are like, who do you trust more on these two issues? Not that he has better ideas, it's just Kamala has no ideas, it seems, and we've experienced now 4 years of of what her administration is going to be like. We had 4 years of what Trump's administration is like. I think that they are going to continue to be bogged down arguing about actually the kind of stuff that we're talking about. Not even Project 2025. It's, at the end of the day, I think Kamala got chosen because of her identity signifiers, and not because that means all black people and Indian people are going to, like, mindless drone, go out and vote and do the thing, because that's not how they work, as we've, like, talked to death. I think it does create enough cover for basically everyone else. Like, think of every actual Democratic voter. Like, they are going to be, all they need to know is, who is it? Who versus who? Show me the two pictures. All right, I pick her. Like, they're going to get bogged down in, is she actually black? Is she, like, these weird culture war things. Like, she has a lot of sex with people. And people are like, I don't care. I have a lot of sex with people. Like, those are the kind of digs I see at her. And it's like, you can't.
They think she's going to win as well. But
if you go down that road, you're going to lose.
I feel like it feels like it's stands versus stands at this point.
Absolutely.
Because everybody else is outside of that. I think this is probably going to be one of the most record low vote turnouts, no matter what. Like, 18 people versus 18 people. We're basically talking about here.
It's you see the propaganda machine is banging on all cylinders here. I was just going down through Twitter going, like, what are people saying about, not people, what is the message being pushed about Tim Walz? Because and it's a lot of, like, it's school lunch, which is funny because school lunch is a thing, as our viewers will know. Like, the Black Panthers started school lunch, and then the government got so embarrassed, they're like, oh, okay, we'll do that, and that's kind of how we got it.
Feed kids, all right, whatever. God.
The bar is very low, and he did accomplish that. And then it's a lot of, like, pictures with him on a farm. He's, like, holding a pig.
Piglets.
He named a highway after Prince, and he has a daughter, and he goes to the fair. He's like a normal guy.
Yeah, he's got a good domestic reputation. Like, paid family and medical leave was a thing that he put into motion. The right to repair things was something he did. Financial aid program, which I mentioned earlier, for low-income students to get free college. Let's see.
He's got some good
Banning
optics.
non-competes, essentially, which is, a bit of a win from workers. So that makes it seem like the abuse on the workers' rights. Creating nation's first standards for nursing home workers. But again, this is what I was talking about, which would include a set a minimum wage of more than $23 an hour starting in 2027. Can you imagine how much more money you're going to need to survive in 2027 than now? Like, give me a fucking break. Doing like some of the worst jobs that there is to do, wiping old ass. Like, give me a break. Like, those people should get way more fucking money. They should like be paid by the government shit tons of money. But it sounds good on paper, and it's being praised. That's a good thing. Same with he did a bill where he said that he was going to ban junk fees. And legalize weed, which is for the state that's been on, an ongoing thing for years and years and years there, apparently. In most states, it's not in a lot of states, not clear cut,
I don't even understand how people are excited by these things anymore. It's like if it
so
was
bare minimum.
1990, like maybe that would be a little exciting, but it's like, dude, half the states have done this stuff ahead of you already,
Right.
and nobody is really proposing any kind of structural or permanent change. Even the stuff they promise could at best be done with an executive order, so it'd last maybe a year, and then like by the time you get all the stuff together and start doing it, like it's just so much nothing. And the Democrats, I think, are seeing whether or not they can win an election just on nothing, and I think they're going to.
Words. Well, it worked last time. Biden had nothing, did nothing, literally less than nothing, and did war all over the fucking place. And we're talking about nominating his successor right now, and you believe she's going to win. So, you can. This is a huge win for both political parties when they find out you have to do literally nothing except say words. That's all that you have to do. Because anything that he did domestically that could, maybe will help somebody down the road is going to be nullified, because we're going to suddenly stop hearing that message from him in any kind of way. He's going to suddenly become very, very neutralized on everything that he did or any kind of thing, because we're supposed to look at this as progressivism. It's not progressivism. It's the bare minimum standard of living for most people. We have so outgrown our modes of functionality with what this modern age needs, and that's by design, to make sure that people do not have what they need and cannot succeed and are always at a disadvantage in one way or another. And then either have to join the military or end up in prison because they can't afford to live. So that's what you should really be worried about. Is don't be worried about buzzwords like 2025 and the Democrats asking you for $5 to stop it. They're not going to do shit. They're behind this too. Stuff is already happening. It's been happening for fucking decades. A lot of these things.
Like, here, let me hit you with something convincing.
Yeah,
convincing thing here. Random fun fact: Kamala Haris and Tim Walz are both 60 this year, which means it's their Chinese zodiac year, and they're both dragons. We have a double dragon ticket here. Very lucky. This is from an account with 190,000 followers.
No, like, okay, to be fair, like, I am like somebody who just absolutely loves astrology and tarot and stuff, but I'm not going to apply it to something real world that matters.
Well, I'm definitely voting for her now that I know that.
Yeah, right. Like, yeah, I do tarot because I want to know, am I going to get a job next week? Not because I want to know if we got like the double dragon ticket here about how things are going to go forward. I know how things are going to go forward. They're not. They're not going to go forward in a positive way. And if you think that the addition of Tim Walz here suddenly makes all the difference, that's what I said. Name something that Kamala Harris or literally any vice president ever did. Pick one. Name anything. They don't have the authority to do anything. That's not what they're there for. They don't have influence. They don't get to do anything. They just give speeches. So the fact of thinking that this is going to somehow put her into this progressive stratosphere is really fucking stupid. And then we say, oh, it's the propaganda machine. It's the propaganda machine. You know what? The propaganda machine, in a lot of cases, is just fucking people. People who are just really ready to believe anything. They're just desperate. And I mean, you kind of can't blame people for being that desperate, honestly, that they just want anything to believe in. I do have a hard time on any political spectrum saying like they're, that's a bad thing. I feel bad that people feel that way. I feel like they just hope so badly that they can get out of the situation that they're in, because there's actually, and I'm going to diverge here a little bit, but there's something called like That is literally, I don't know, but you would say it's in like the journals of medicine, the DSM or anything like that. But there's a thing that's recognized by psychologists in America and in Britain, and it's called shit life syndrome, and that's a real thing. And it really ultimately comes down to people that go to see these therapists saying, what their problems are. Almost always, it's got to do with the fact that they can't afford to live well, let alone close to what they hope for themselves, or that their circumstances keep them from achieving any goals or dreams that they have, and they just keep getting knocked back further and further away from it. So they feel like they're living unfulfilled lives and they're slaves to their jobs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if you have people in this situation everywhere, the government benefits from that, first of all, because again, we have poverty drafts, we have ways to get you into, legalized slavery through the prison system. But you also have these disillusioned people who just are desperate for change and hope. And that was Obama's whole thing. Hope. Literally the word hope. I'm going to fix it. Hope. And meanwhile, look over here at the hope, because I'm going to grease the entire Middle East, just for fun, for shits and giggles and resources. So things to bring this all around town here. You should not be actually putting your hopes and dreams into these people, because you literally have the facts of what's happened. And if anything could happen, it wouldn't, because somebody would come along and stop it, and everybody be like, oh, parliamentarians said no.
They wouldn't let us vote for Bernie Sanders. They were so scared of Bernie Sanders, who is now fully on board with all of the bullshit. He was too scary. So if you think we're really going to, oh my God, he could destroy all of America, it's like, then we're not going to be allowed to vote for him. Like, that's, right. If you're going to do anything.
I'm wondering lately, do you ever get the feeling that almost like he was sort of like a ploy? Like it was almost like his whole candidacy was like to get people, it was like the new version of rock the vote.
To get you into the Democratic Party. Yeah. He's like, oh, you're all crazy. Into
the system. Because either you were for him or against him, and he appealed to both people on both sides of the aisle. Remember that Fox interview thing that he did where they were applauding him, and they're like, don't do that! You're not supposed to be doing that! You're supposed to hate this guy. And so, because I don't know, I don't want to get too conspiratorial about it, but sometimes I feel like the way that he, nobody really knew him that well, and then he just shot to fame suddenly, and everybody really wanted him, and they were like, you can't have him. And he's like, okay, you can't have me. And then suddenly went lockstep right in with all these people and all these horrible policies.
His wife has legal shit, and he doesn't want to deal with that.
Yeah, maybe that's, honestly, maybe that's all that it is. But I sort of started to get the feeling was he the modern version of rock the vote?
It's am I dumb or did he change? And I think it's I was dumb and he changed.
Yeah, I don't know, fell in line, had some dirt, I guess. And I don't know, it just kind of got me thinking. Every now and again when I see the way he behaves now versus just a few years ago, I'm like, this seems so suspicious, but I can't exactly say why. I don't know if I don't know. It's just it's just because you just don't know how deep things go. You know that things are being done in dark rooms and back rooms and dark money and all that kind of shit. And you know that the Democrats in the last election literally said they had the right to choose. They didn't have to be voted for by the people. And then magically, one of the lowest ranking people gets the nomination, who is Joe Biden. After that big, the whole, primary thing, and he goes on and he says, we're going to win. And then suddenly he's the nominee and everybody just steps aside. That was very ominous and strange.
We had 3 non primaries in a row where 2 had just admitted manipulated results, and then this one this year where we just didn't have one, just didn't have primary at all. They told us who we're going to vote for, and I absolutely believe that that's who they're going to vote for. This, either turnout will be low and more Democrat voters go out, or turnout will be really high because once again they've convinced people this is the most important election of our lifetimes. You have to vote for a lesser of two evil, even though both people have such identical policies that they can't talk about policy because people might start noticing that they have the exact same policies. We're coming up at the end of the hour, but I wanted to look at this. Hey, look, it's Tim Walz. Who's he hanging out with? Who's this guy? Oh, this is Yanam Cohen, who is the consul general of Israel, not to America, just to the Midwest. Like, they have so many people attached. Like, every politician in America seems to get their, like, Israel babysitter who, who tells you what you're allowed to say.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like that's why I'm saying it's like we are taught to believe that there things are being done in the dark. We know that they're being done in the dark, and then like we got to the point, like you just said, now we didn't even there was no primary even, So, but that I'll tell you what that's going to do is pretty much exactly as intended. Is now the precedent is set, because now, now why ever even have a primary again? Whoever said that you were guaranteed people were guaranteed a primary? Why would Republicans do that? Like definitely not. They're going to go with their guy no matter what. Like, why even bother? Because if you get Trump in there or somebody like Trump, and he would say like, it's just like the whole debating thing. He's like, why would I do that? Why would I bother? There's no reason. I'm just going to be it. And then everybody gets behind that, and then you don't necessarily have a choice. So that's where things are going to go from here on out. It's corruption right out in the open, no matter who, blue or red or whatever, is going to, do that. And then people are like, oh, Tim Walz supports ranked choice voting. So, that's not going to fix anything. That's another big thing too. Yeah, I do believe in ranked choice voting. I think that would be, helpful, but that's a Band-Aid on a broken leg. We're not going to get anywhere with that.
They can find 5 candidates who have the exact same policy, and you can choose amongst those 5.
That's exactly right. It's the illusion of choice. It's the same exact situation. And that's what the primaries were sort of supposed to be like, a ranked choice vote, where like you got to pick out of here, use like 10 candidates. And then now they've taken even that away. So it's just from here on out, like there's not going to be any real going back from this unless it's like he just said, like, here's 5 identical candidates. You pick the one that you like. If you're the one
That's what the Bernie primary was. It was 4 identical candidates and Bernie Sanders, who arguably was an identical one, it turns out anyway, because I don't think he would have stood up against any of this shit. And then they got him out of there because he was a little too scary.
Yeah. And, I think the funniest thing about this whole VP pick thing was, like, I think that they did try to make you think she was going to pick Josh Shapiro, which you probably never, or they never really actually were going to. I don't think they were, because he had such a bad reputation and people on both sides had really bad taste in their mouth about him.
I don't know who any of these people are.
Right, yeah, it's really hard to tell these people apart. But I think they were always planning to go the warm and fuzzy route here. But what I think the funniest thing about the whole thing is like the only person who thought that it was going to be Pete Buttigieg was Pete Buttigieg. I don't think they I don't think he was in contention whatsoever. I don't think that he has he's got no report card. He doesn't have anything that he can sit there and say that he's done. He's done nothing, and anything that he's done has been bad. So
you've had all these train disasters, and then he gets out there and he's like, well, actually, trains crash all the time. It's not a big deal. And we're like,
normal,
Pete,
actually.
Jesus Christ.
Right. And he's got that from Parks and Rec vibe, like Ice Town type of a guy. He's really never done anything successful or well. He's just sort of like, I'm here, guys. And it's like, if he thought like this is the kind of thing that hurts him the most, because if we're not gonna be doing primaries anymore, you have no fucking chance, and you're like brand new to all this, like you're never gonna make it, guy. But I think that's the funniest thing that came out of it, because there were so many people. Well, I won't say so many, but there were a lot of liberals that were pulling for him for whatever fucking reason. But I think that the only person that legitimately thought that it was going to be him was him. And that to me makes me laugh, because I hate him. So, I
do not.
That too. Yeah. For some reason, Pete thought it was Pete. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the problem. And that's also a problem for us too, is we have to we're trying to sound like we know what we're talking about, but we don't know these people any better than you do. We have to try to figure them out and read what's going on with the other people and how people are feeling about them.
It's very convenient when the whose face it is might change, but what happens and what policy gets pushed forward does not. Because then you really don't even have to they could have chose any generic D Democrat, stick them in there. They're not gonna. We got to stop pretending like the people who we elect are even running anything. Like, Biden hasn't been the president possibly the entire time he's been in office because he doesn't have a functioning brain.
No.
Yet we just things just keep happening though. Like weirdly,
Right.
the things progress. We're basically electing a mascot for our country, somebody who's gonna they give speeches that kind of matters a little. You could really F something up in a speech, like when Biden accidentally hurried up gay marriage by saying in a speech like, "We're doing it," and he's like, "Wait, we're not supposed to do that for like another. We're
Never
supposed to
mind.
keep saying we're gonna do it, and then
But not
not do it."
actually that it's happening for sure.
But other than that, like their foreign policy, and not the actual policy, but like the posturing, the speeches that are meant to be heard by other countries, the actual diplomacy part, that might matter a bit. It
Yeah.
certainly affects like our world, our reputation on the world stage. But like other than that, we've kind of proven that America can run without a real president for the
Mhm.
last 2 years. And is Kamala on all her like benzos or whatever she's on? Like, is she really going to be making all these decisions, or is she just
Yeah.
along on the train? And they're like, okay, then you do this. Okay, thank you very much. And okay, sign this. All right, like
Yeah. And there's
just
always been this
sleepwalk
kind
through.
of this theorized thing with people where it's like, oh, the president's just a puppet. They're serving other masters. They have other people running the show. It's not that they're just the face of it. So that wisdom or that concept has always been out there. Regardless of who it actually was. And that pretty much is true. If it was just one person, they wouldn't have these other positions that were even needed for anything. So it is a team sport in that way. But that's again why it's so important to note that it's very, very unlikely that if Kamala Harris wins, she's going to unseat these people who are already in these positions. So
Well,
that
I have no music today, but we are over an hour. I didn't have my guitar set up, but I don't know. Are there any finalizing thoughts?
we check in on the chat one more time.
Keep hanging out. Not that much is going to change either way. Don't be stressed about it. That's where I'm trying to get people, because I know people who are like losing their minds. They really think that the country is going to be like, if Trump gets in, someone's going to come up to my house and shoot me. Like they sound like
Yeah.
they're coming for our guns people, but like in a weird mirror universe where you
Right.
used to have the we're scared of Fox News people, and now we have the we're scared of MSNBC people.
Right.
And it's like, it's not really,
And
Trump won't be as bad as you think, and Kamala won't be as good as you think.
It is very odd, though, how quick and how easy it was to get liberals, like the liberal class of people and Democratic supporters, whether they identify with that moniker or not, to very quickly switch to being cool with genocide, with the acquisition of resources because it's somewhere else and not in America happening. Like it was
Everybody hated Joe
quick.
Biden, and then he was the president and the most popular guy ever, and don't you dare say anything about him. Everybody hated Kamala Harris a month ago, and now, oh, don't you dare,
Yeah.
Queen. Like,
Yeah, right, Queen. Yeah, it's good. Like, come on, give me a break here. And it's like it was almost like like it happened almost like flipping a switch. It was very, very strange, the way that people just were like fine with it, like suddenly. And it's like, what are we supposed to do with that kind of mentality? Like that just goes to show you that people just want to fight. They really don't care about they don't care if they're wrong. They don't want to be told that they're wrong, even if they are wrong. Like they're not interested in learning or growing. They just want to fight about shit because they feel so bad about their life. If they can invest into something else that might, move the chains a little bit on their life, then they're willing to do it. And that's really all that we are in. Like if you sat down like a group of liberals or a group of conservatives together, you would find out how batshit both of them were, and they would find out how batshit both of them were, because they really don't stand for anything. And that's what this election is going to go. It's all identity politics. If you were going to vote Democrat, and you're going to vote Democrat anyway. If you're going to vote Republican, you're going to vote Republican anyway. Nothing they're going to do or say is going to go like, well, I was going to vote for Trump, or well, I was going to vote for Kamala Harris, but now I'm thinking Trump. Nobody's going to do that. So it was already going to happen. And this is going to leave out, probably for the first time in maybe since the Nixon era, leave out a significant portion, get the right word, significant portion of the population. And I'm not just talking about, oh, leftism is so big, it's not. We know it's not. But like just people who don't want either of these candidates and maybe see themselves as independents or just don't want part of this. So I think what we are going to see is like one of the lowest, if not lowest, voter turnouts we've ever seen. And I don't think that's really going to have much bearing on how things go forward, except that they find out that they can pick their own candidates and they barely need any votes to win. And anybody outside of that doesn't actually even matter. So hopefully over time, more people will leave the traditional binary being one, not really binary, but binary thought of what they are or who they are, or these identity politics will hopefully get left behind when more people feel disenfranchised by it.
This as a mechanism, electoral politics, a bourgeois American-style democracy, is only going to function as a release valve for people like, oh, this is how you change things, is you vote. More and more people have been like, oh, well, no, nothing changes at all, regardless of how I vote. And crises keep piling up. So it eventually is going to kind of all fall apart, like either from a financial side or from a, like, we can't keep the power on in some of our cities. Like, there are issues that are coming down the way.
Yeah.
And there will be a point in election where it's like, man, we have voted so hard, and people just get madder and madder, and then you start getting like riots and shit, and then either people will there's going to be a day when like there's just so little respect for our institutions that you'll have whoever authority figure going bah bah bah, and just most people go, who is that? Like, why? Who is that person even talking? What?
And I think that's what most of us want on the outside of that situation. Like, I, in my mind, sit around and think about like how we could like circumvent all that. Like, that's my whole like motivation, is like, I'm not talking about let's overthrow the government. Like, I don't need anybody beating on my door. I'm talking about like, what can we do to stand up for ourselves that would just say, shut up. just nullify whatever it is that they, and that's why I'm always on about the People's Union, or developing things by committee, because that's the only way that like we're really gonna like see real change happen in a significant way, because they're just going to continue. And then like you bring it back around town here on the Project 2025, they're going to continue down the same road no matter which party is in charge, because our government is bought and paid for by corporations. So, and that's not going to change. What would have to change first would be literal alien invasion Armageddon. Like, nothing is going to change getting the money out of politics. It's just not going to happen. So we're going to have to start looking more again, to how we protect ourselves, starting in the small level and then growing from there, because we're not going to get support. Things are not going to get better, and more people are going to get disenfranchised from the system. Like Jared was just saying, it's like, okay, well, wages, look down the road 5 years from now, like, okay, so minimum wage doesn't go up, food prices are still astronomical, more homelessness than ever, all of our problems are like 1,000% worse. Well, okay, then we're on to we're through another election cycle and on to the next one, and then this one didn't do anything, and this one didn't do anything, and this one didn't do anything, but the next one's going to. So that's, it's just going to keep leaving out people until there's nobody left to vote. But if we work proactively, and try to reclaim the community that's been stripped away from us, I think we could, not have to wait for, to open your door to Walking Dead. Like, we don't have to take it that far. But yes, we have we filled our time, I think, significantly, or for enough. I'm so my words are so twisted up this week. It's like one of these kind of weeks where things are just like so crazy about what's going on, and it's going to get worse. It's going to be so much harder because there's going to be so much input coming in. But that's what we do. We just try to make sense of it for you and to ourselves as much as we can. So we appreciate you tuning in. And as always, you can check out our archive of videos on YouTube and Rumble. We're all over everything. You can follow us on Twitter. We're brand new on Twitch now, so you can check us out there. And we really appreciate hearing from you in the chat. We really appreciate you watching and tuning in. And we will, as Jared said, he doesn't have a tune this week, but that's okay because he's not a machine. And we will see you next week, and probably with more chaos and everything. So you can send any questions, comments to our DMs, and we'll try to address, or anything you want to hear about or know about. So, all right, thanks so much, everybody. We will see you next week. Bye.
Goodbye.